What it do, cuckolds? It's your boy, the hater. Hater outdoors. I'm in a foul mood. I went outside to smoke a cigarette. I really need to quit smoking, but, here we are. And basically, I turn on YouTube Shorts, and I see a clip of Chris Van Vliet and DDP. Now, I happen to like both of these guys, but the clip was complete bullshit. Basically, Van Vliet says the following. You see a lot of people who have success in their 40s and 50s today, and he shows pictures of like LA Knight and like CM Punk and Edge, right? And then he's like, you didn't see that a lot during your time, DDP. What is it? And then DDP goes on and explains that people back then partied a lot, and all the comments are like, kind of like falling for this bold-faced lie, right? And basically, one of the top comments is, like, people back in the day thought of themselves as rock stars, and people today think of themselves as athletes. Yeah, that's definitely it. That's definitely it. And this kind of stuff angers me. That's definitely it. Nakamura thinks of himself as an athlete, and Billy Gunn doesn't. You know what I mean? Billy Gunn thinks of himself as a rock star. Have you people lost your minds? Billy Gunn would literally beat Nakamura in 2 seconds and would beat him in literally every single sport imaginable. You understand what I'm saying? Nakamura did MMA. Shut up. Billy Gunn would probably do the famouser on him in real life. You know what I mean? That's not it at all. And this is the kind of stuff that I was talking about a few days ago when I said WWE lies to you. It's not just the WWE. There's just straight up lies coming from people who might even mean well, right? Like DDP and Chris Van Vliet. But this is a lie. Like DDP is a contemporary of people like The Undertaker, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Kane, The Big Show, Mark Henry, all of whom, Booker T, Kurt Angle, all of whom wrestled well into their 40s. This idea that Van Vliet posits, right, that a lot of people didn't make it into their 40s. No, it was about the same proportion as it is now. The only difference, if any, is this. It's a very simple difference. Well, there's two differences, actually. Number one, it's obviously easier to wrestle until your 40s and 50s if you have a Nakamura or Daniel Bryan moveset. If your moveset consists of you doing fake kicks and running into things with your knees, you know what I mean? Then you can do that forever because it takes nothing. It takes no athleticism. It takes no physical effort. You don't really get hurt. And despite this, people like Daniel Bryan still get hurt. Now, that's different than if you're being chokeslammed through like a cell door, you know what I mean, by The Undertaker if you're Mankind. That's different than being hit with a chair to the head like 20 times in a match, right? That's why. It has nothing to do with them partying. Oh, the wrestlers of today take care of themselves better. Really? Is that what you think it is? Like, do you think that like Xavier Woods is going to be wrestling when he's 60 like Billy Gunn? Do you really think that anyone today is going to have that kind of longevity? Absolutely not. They'll be like retired and probably like crippled by that point to continue with this nonsense. But the idea that was pushed forward, and again, I'm not just specifically talking about this clip. This is just one clip, right? But it speaks to a symptom. This symptom of like somehow things have gotten better, right? Oh, the boys take care of themselves. Oh, the boys don't party as much. Fuck the boys. You know what I'm saying? They're also not entertaining. What do you think of them apples? Now, the hater's all about putting safety first. Ain't no doubt about it. That's why the hater believes in like 5-minute matches. But these people have like 50-minute matches where all they do is pretend to kick each other, right? And then they're like, wow, we had a great match, didn't we? No, you really didn't. CM Punk versus Daniel Bryan pretending to kick each other is not a good match. It's boring as shit. It's not as entertaining as like, I don't know, Val Venus versus The Godfather in a 4-minute throwaway match on Raw. It really isn't. And that's the problem. People are talking about it as if like the wrestlers of yesterday are these like bumbling idiots who somehow stumbled their way into drawing 8 million people. No, motherfucks. It was all by design. And that's the kind of stuff that I don't like. Like, it's just for some reason this TikTok, or this YouTube short, I should say, really pissed me off. Because like, it's like he shows, and I like LA Knight, don't get me wrong. But he shows a picture of LA Knight who's like literally 40 or 41. And he's like, yeah, you don't see a lot of this going on. What, 40-year-olds who are mid-carders? Ric Flair was like 65, or however fucking old he was, and he won the Intercontinental title. What are you talking about? We had Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash. All these people, some of them wrestled till they died. You know what I mean? But the way that it was presented was like, yeah, nobody made it to 40. What are you talking about? Everyone made it to 40. Stone Cold just came back like last year. You know what I mean? People like are still coming back. The second and perhaps most important reason for this is because back then, you could, feasibly pass the baton to someone, right? So if you are The Rock, you could pass the baton to Cena. And you could ride off into the sunset and do your own things, right? If you're Kane, you pass the baton on to whoever's going to be the next Kane, right? The other people that were coming up were the likes of Lesnar, Batista, Orton, you know what I mean? Cena, as I just said. Like a bunch of people of that caliber. Nowadays, you have nobody coming up, so the show has to focus on Cucky Rhodes and on CM Punk. Who's it going to focus on? Axiom and Carmelo Hayes? Ludwig Kaiser? You know what I mean? There's nobody for the show to focus on, so the people in their 40s take the limelight. But it's not like they're taking this massive limelight. Like, what have the over 40-year-olds accomplished in the last 5 years? Name one person over 40 who has done anything in the last 5 years in WWE. You know what I mean? There isn't one. Like, the only example you can think of is LA Knight becoming a mid-card champion one time. He's 41, he's a one-time mid-card champion. This is a title that Carlito won like 4 times in 3 months. And LA Knight won it once in his life. That's Carlito we're talking about. So this idea that it's better to be 40 years old now than it was back then in wrestling is absurd. It's absurd. Yes, if you're Finn Balor can wrestle for another 20 years. He doesn't do anything. I could do all the moves that Finn Balor does, I can do them. All the moves that Nakamura does, I can do them. I shouldn't be able to say these things, right? Like, for example, I cannot do the people's elbow the way The Rock does it, right? Of course, I can copy it, right? But it won't be as cool because I'm not The Rock. You understand what I'm saying? That's the difference. The difference is that people back then were better, and as a result, either one of two things happened. One, they got more opportunities elsewhere like The Rock, or two, they passed the baton to somebody else. The way DDP made it sound was as if everybody was like this drunk lunatic, which may have been true, but that has nothing to do with anything because if they were drunk lunatics, then they kept going. Like Scott Hall wrestled until he was like mid-40s, rest in peace. Kevin Nash, same thing. Like, this guy, see the main event mafia? Am I the only one who fucking understands that this is a bold-faced lie? It's like literally everyone who was champion during the Attitude Era, like literally, like everyone, like 100% of the people that became world champion during the Attitude Era, 100% of them wrestled into their 40s. 100%. The way that Chris Van Vliet made it seem was like none of them do. What are you talking about? Everyone wrestled past their 40s. But I just listed everybody. Scott Steiner is still like wrestling in the indies, And he's like, a lot of people don't have the same success anymore. DDP himself is someone that was a world champion in his late 30s, and then in his 40s, he was wrestling The Undertaker, over stalking his wife. You know what I mean? DDP was 40 or 41 back then. And remember how big of a star he felt like? He felt like a much bigger star than LA Knight. He felt like a much bigger star than Cody Rhodes because he was. See what I'm saying? So this notion that people in their 40s just didn't do it back in the Attitude Era is just a bold-faced lie. It is a bold-faced lie. Even the people like The Undertaker, who obviously aged a little rapidly. You see Undertaker when he's 30, when he was the American Badass, a lot of people don't realize this. When he was the American Badass, he was in his early 30s. You know what I mean? But he felt like he was 45 because he always looked like shit. He always looked older, He always looked like a man and not like a young man. So even people like him kept going until their 50s, Then we had Ric Flair. We had so many other people that went way past their limit. And as a matter of fact, how do you reconcile what Chris Van Vliet and DDP said in this particular instance? Again, not focusing on the instance itself. How do you reconcile this with the old people are taking the young people's spots? Well, which is it, cocksucker? Which is it? Are the old people taking the young people's spots, or are there no old people? What are you talking about? The reason why I bring this up is because it connects directly to my other point about WWE lying to us, right? The amount of lies that are being told are preposterous. I didn't even plan on making this video. I legit went to the parking lot of my apartment building so I can escape this wind, it's very windy, and smoke a few cigarettes and watch some YouTube stuff, right? But the thing that I watched was this, so I promptly left the parking lot, and here we are, Hater Outdoors, right? This kind of lies are not gonna cut it. Things will only get worse if we are told lies, right? The comment had 2,700 likes. The comment that said, yesterday's athletes thought they were rock stars. Today's wrestlers think they're athletes. What are you talking about? What athletes? Kurt Angle would murder literally everyone in WWE, NAW right now, in a row. He would run through them with no problems whatsoever. He would make them all tap. Snap or tap, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, look at the athleticism of Axiom. Kurt Angle would destroy him in 2 seconds. Like Brock Lesnar, who wrestles in his 40s as we speak, right? Brock Lesnar would destroy everyone like in WWE history, basically, right? He would kill them all. And people are like, oh, these people in their 40s, they have so much more success nowadays. And they show a picture of like Edge, who's number one in his 50s, so which means that he had success in his 40s when he was in WWE, right? And if he didn't, it's because he was injured. So what could it be? You see what I'm saying? And with that being said, it's just like everything's just softer. So as a result of it being softer, people are less likely to have long-term injuries. Back in the day, they were more likely to work through their injuries. Now it's like, oh, I hurt my toe. I'm going to be out for 8 weeks. Like, by the way, what the fuck is up with that? I mean, how are all these like high-level athletes just getting hurt every couple of weeks? I lost in my fantasy league. I was number 4 in football fantasy, or fantasy football. And I traded for Christian McCaffrey, taking a gamble on him. And it's like this guy just plays like 3 games. He's out for like 6 weeks. It's not normal, motherfuckers. If you really are this high-level athlete, it's not normal to like run and twist your leg. What the fuck? What is this shit, by the way? In football, that happens all the time. I understand if some, 700-pound Samoan is tackling you, I get it. Or some 700-pound white boy from like Kentucky is tackling you. I get it. You know what I mean? Like that's gonna hurt. You might get hurt. But some of these, like the wide receiver, they catch the ball, they do a juke, and then they just fall to the ground, and it's like, oh, ACL, MCL tear, out for 9 months. It's like you just injured yourself, dude. You're just running around, and you injured yourself. You're out for 9 months. Like that's not a premier athlete. It's funny. That kind of shit doesn't really happen in like soccer and stuff. You know what I mean? You don't see that. Like you don't ever see like Cristiano Ronaldo doing this. You don't ever see LeBron doing this. It's always in football that these people just injure themselves. Like, they just run around. They're like, oh, like all of a sudden the person collapses. They're like out for 3 years. Yeah. So it's the same thing in wrestling, right? It's like, and again, I'm not advocating working through injuries and like, take care of your health. Don't get me wrong. But the way people talk about it is like, oh, like, people like today, like they're lasting into their 40s. Daniel Bryan like nearly died in the ring in his 30s. What are you talking about? This is just another example of the gaslighting and the lying that is happening, around wrestling, right? We see these things with our eyes, but that's the whole point of gaslighting, right? You see with your eyes. You're like, wait a second. Undertaker wrestled through his 40s. Flair wrestled through like his 80s. You know what I mean? Hogan wrestled forever. Like The Rock is still wrestling, arguably. Stone Cold, Lesnar, Angle, like all these people wrestled. But Chris Van Vliet then just says it, and you're like, oh yeah, that's right, nobody did wrestle back then. No, they did, motherfucks. Use your memory. Remember what actually happened. Don't let people just like tell you that something that didn't happen happened, right? These are not true things. Trish Stratus came back. She's an Attitude Era girl. She came back like 2 years ago, and had like a nice little run, like not a crazy run, but a run nevertheless. So the way that Chris Van Vliet made it seem, and the way that DDP, he has to agree. What is he gonna do? Like just challenge him on it? But the point is, it's like they made it seem as if it was like this like cultural shift. No, the same thing's been happening for a long time. The only difference is that now it's considered impressive for some reason, right? Like one of my friends trained with like one of the Wild Samoans, like Alpha, I think. I don't know which one, to be honest. I never really understood which one's which. But he trained with one of them at the Samoan wrestling school or whatever, right? And in the Samoan wrestling school, Alpha or maybe Sika, I don't know, motherfucks, one of those motherfucks, he told my friend, he was like, a wrestler's prime begins at 35. That's what he said. A wrestler's prime begins at 35. Because 35, according to Alpha or Sika, I don't want to misquote, rest in peace, both of them, right? But the point is that according to them, the way it worked out is that by 35, you have like, I guess, a combination of, experience and like skill / enough youth to still get it done. You know what I mean? That was the idea. The idea is that like, okay, you're like relatively young, right? You're only 35. You're not like an old man, right? And now you know what you are. Like you know what moves you do. You know who your character is, etc. And that's when you have to, grab it by the balls. That's when your prime begins in wrestling. The prime doesn't last 1 year. It lasts 3 or 4 or 5 years. Then you plateau and then you just move on, right? And think about it, that's how it's been for everybody. Roman Reigns, Cookie Rhodes, all these guys in their mid-30s, that's when they started to peak. This is not like back in the day. That's the difference. The difference is everyone just peaked earlier back then because people were just better, right? You don't have to have The Rock there and have him become Stardust first, and have him become Cookie Rhodes first, and have him become dashing and undashing. He becomes The Rock, and he becomes a megastar, right? With other people, they have to wait their turn, right? Cody Rhodes cannot be a megastar when Randy Orton is going to be a megastar, or when Cena's going to be a megastar. They're about the same age. Like, Cody's like 5 years younger than Randy Orton, right? But Randy Orton is going to be a megastar for like 15 years. Cody's going to be a megastar for like 2, right? Megastar in quotes. So he has to wait until Orton is done. As simple as that. I mean, like, it's basic common sense. So that's the difference, motherfuckers. It's nothing to do with like, oh, people back then didn't do it, people now did. No, DDP is like, he's a contemporary with like everyone in the Attitude Era. So with that, suck it, cocksuckers.